From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be your host for this episode, and my name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicki.
And I'm Jennifer.
You are. And we have a returning guest, four-time returning guest, even though this one's going to come out before the third time he was returning guest, just due to the way things are coming. We have Ross Bentley. Ross Bentley back to the podcast again.
So let me get that straight. This is the fourth time, but it'll be the third time?
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like when we ask you a question, you say it depends. So this one is being recorded fourth, but coming out before the third, which is now the fourth.
Wow. Huh. That takes some math there, and that way over my head.
Yeah. Well, you know.
I'm with you there, Ross.
Okay. That's fine. So we're dropping a hint that Ross will be on for the 200th episode to celebrate again. So
yay!
The way I'm viewing this, Ross, this makes up for us not having the guts to ask you on for a 50th episode. So you've been on every 50 episodes.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
You're like a celebratory guest.
That's right. We made it again, and we owe you a thank you through your books and your website and all your offering and talking with us on and off the podcast. We actually won a race since the last time we talked to you, and we would like to thank you for all your help.
Yay!
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Another check mark under the anybody can do this list.
Mm-hmm.
Total domination, was it?
No, just, didn't make any dumb mistakes and just drove solid and prepared a car now that we know what that means. So,
yes, we went from nothing to something.
We did. Now we got
yeah. I mean, I never even knew how to change a tire, and I helped rebuild this truck over the winter. So it was awesome. And I know this truck inside and out.
So if I have problems with my car, I can call you?
Absolutely.
No. Not me.
You can call
Still
her.
there.
I'm not sure we know what to do, but you can call anytime, Ross. We'll take it.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. So, Ross, you've done my number one bucket list item. You've done the Thunderhill 25.
Yep.
You've done my number two bucket list item now, the One Lap of America.
So do I need to ask what your number three bucket list is?
It's not really a list. It's kind of a driving goal. So I have a self-imposed limit on how fast I want to be, but I want to be really good for that speed of car. So like E46 and down. I don't need to go faster.
Okay.
So that one's kind of a more, I don't know, it when you get there kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure that I was ticking off everything on your bucket list.
Well, I mean, somebody's got to.
Single-handedly.
That's right. You're showing me that it's possible. Now I just have to follow in your footsteps, which
just flex, Ross. Just flex right now.
Right. Right. So I got to tell you. So yeah, just finished doing the One Lap of America, and it is I'm not going to say it was a bucket list thing for me, but it was something that's because of the history of that event.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's, it's always been there. And yeah, I've always wanted to do it. I got a chance to do it. And I got to say, it's kind of a crazy event I would say anybody that's into cars and driving, you need to do it at least once. And when you finish it, then you can decide whether you want to do it again.
Well, let's skip to the end, Ross. I saw a video. It says you want to do it again.
Yeah. I think I want to do it. So my problem is that, I went into this event going, I'm here to learn and have a great experience. That lasted maybe an hour into the week-long event. And then it was, okay, how do I win this thing?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's not exactly shocking, Ross.
It's a bit of a disease that I've got. So, But no, it was an absolute blast. It was really, it was a blast. There were times where you kind of go, why am I doing this? And there are other times you're going, oh man, I'm so glad I did this. It's just a cool event. And yeah, you need to do it, Bill.
So, for those of our audience members that are new to racing, what is One Lap America?
So if you remember or read about or saw the movie Cannonball Run, way back when, I think Burt Reynolds was in it or something like that.
Dom DeLuise. Yep.
Okay. And originally it was started by Brock Yates, who was writing for Car and Driver way back in the 70s when all the speed limit stuff came in the 70s. And as kind of a form of protest, Brock Yates created this event called the Cannonball Baker Memorial Rally Cannonball Run thing. And basically what it was they started at a garage in New York City, and it was the first team to get to, I think it was the pier at Redondo Beach or something in Los Angeles. And they did it 4 times, and that was the rules. Do whatever it takes to get across the country any way you want, obviously on 4 wheels. And I think they ran that 4 times. I don't know of too many people that got arrested out of the deal, but some great stories came out of it. The movie, Cannonball Run movie, came out of that. And then shortly after that, I guess it was decided that this needed to be somewhat more politically correct. And they created the One Lap of America. And currently, Brock Yates Jr. runs it. And this year was the 36th running of the One Lap of America. And basically what happens is you start in one place, and now where it starts, like how this one went, we started a week and a bit ago, and we started on a Saturday at Tire Rack in South Bend, Indiana. You do 3 laps around their wet skid pad in one direction, then 3 laps the other direction. And basically it's a competition who can generate the highest G loads in both directions. And there's 80 cars competing. So you run through that. Then you take off, you pack up, you head to Grissom Air Force Base, which is about an hour south of South Bend. And we do an autocross. And you get 3 runs through an autocross. It's your combined total for that. And then you head from there and you start driving. You drive to Memphis, Tennessee, which I think was an additional 400 and something miles. And then the following morning, you do a time trial on the Memphis road course. Our drag race got canceled because of rain.
Yep.
So we got on the road a little bit earlier for a 500-mile drive to Eagles Canyon Raceway, east or west of Dallas. And the next morning, we did time trials on Eagles Canyon. And I got to tell you, if you've not been to Eagles Canyon Raceway, what an awesome racetrack. It is fantastic. They resurfaced it and added some more track, I guess, a little over a year ago. It is so much fun.
Mm.
So
was that your first time there since they've
That was my first time. Yep. Next day, at the end of that, we drove to New Orleans. The next morning, did time trial at NOLA, pack up, and then drive to Atlanta. In our case, we had the lucky opportunity to drive through tornadoes and some of the worst weather I've ever had to drive through. And we got to Dawsonville, Georgia that night around midnight after almost, I think that was about a 570 mile transit. I think that one was. And next morning, AMP at Atlanta Motorsport Park. And then in the afternoon over to Lanier Speedway to do 3 laps, time trials on the oval at Lanier.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then head north from there up to West Virginia so that we could be at Summit Point the following morning for 2 time trials, and then pack up and head to Michigan. And that was the longest transit that night. That was over 600 miles up to Gingerman. And so Friday we did Gingerman, and then had the very, very leisurely 1-hour drive down to South Bend so that we could do Saturday morning on the dry skid pad. at Tire Rack's headquarters, and that's what wrapped the thing up. And basically, you get points for how you finish in each event, and it just keeps adding up over the whole week. And yeah, it's grueling, it's tiring, and it's crazy, and yeah, it's fun. It's fun in a sick kind of way.
So is it like a team that does it, or is it a solo driver?
Minimum 2 drivers. And there was so there was a Porsche Cayenne with 4 drivers in it, including Randy Popst.
Oh, of course, Randy.
Of course, Randy.
Randy's everywhere.
Yeah.
There was probably another guy there, and he stole the seat. So.
And I'm pretty sure Randy got the award for the most tire noise out of a vehicle, as the car is howling around the track. But yeah, so 2 drivers. I was in a Porsche GT3 RS, and I will say on the track it is a wonderful car. And actually on the highway it's pretty darn nice, except the seats are not the most comfortable, and it is definitely a vehicle that you cannot sleep in. So some of the teams would catch some sleep. One of the driver would have a nap while they're driving. I was driving with Mike Martin. Mike invited me to co-drive with him in his GT3, and neither one of us slept a wink in the car.
So what do you do if you have more than 2 drivers? Do you all travel together, or do you meet along the route? Or
no, that's one of the cool things about it is you have to. So it's you and your co-driver or co-drivers in that vehicle only. You can't have somebody else in the car with you. And you can't have any support vehicles. You can't have spare tires. You can't have anything. Basically, you can carry. We filled up the front trunk in a Porsche with our underwear and socks for the week. Mike was basically brought shirts that he would throw away at the end of each day.
I was just going to say, you're just pitching clothes along the way. Because
exactly. Lightening the load and the bare necessities in terms of tools, tire pressure gauge and a air pump and, flat fix and helmets and Hans device. And one of the things that you learn is when you show up at a track, you basically unload the car as quickly as you can, get ready to go, do the competition, and then pack up as quickly as you can to get on the road for the next one. You run in the order that you finished at the first event. So we finished 7th at the first event at Memphis. And so that meant that we got to run 7th each time, which is an advantage in that if you're 80th, you're leaving the event in mid or late afternoon, whereas we would get out of there early afternoon. So the flip side is those people didn't have to show up at the track quite as early in the morning because they were not going to be the first ones on the track. So yeah, you pack, and we packed a little tent because when it rains, you pop out of the car, you pop this tent out, you throw all your gear into that tent, and then you're ready to go. I must say, one of my biggest regrets of the whole event was that somebody didn't have video camera on Mike and I the first time we tried to fold this tent back up, because it was one of these ones that you had to kind of twist and fold and put it into this bag.
Right. Yeah. It's the ones you toss in the air and they just kind of spring together.
Exactly. And there was a moment there when the two of us are sprawled out on the grass trying to tackle this thing and twist it and wrestle with
wrestling a snake.
Oh, yeah. And of course we're laughing at ourselves, which is only making it worse. So yeah, some funny stuff.
So,
oh my God.
So one thing, we got into your co-driver. How did you guys choose which car? Like, because you can basically drive anything.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, first of all, how this even came about was I had Andy Hollis on my podcast 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago, somewhere in there.
Yep.
And Andy's done the one lap many times and he's talking about it. And I'm going, man, I really want to do that. I really want to do that. And I said it enough times on my own podcast that about an hour after the podcast went live, I get an email from this fellow in Kentucky, Mike, saying, hey, do you want to come and do one lap with me? My car, just come and drive. And I'm I'm like, sure, if it fits my schedule, I'll be there. Of course, that was for 2020, which the event got canceled. So we put it off to this year, and fortunately it fit my schedule. And Mike said, I've got two cars we could do it in, and one's a Porsche Turbo and one's a GT3 RS. Which one do you want to use? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't care. Well, Mike went to the track, tried both of them, and found that the GT3 RS was a little quicker. So that's the one we chose. The Turbo would have been more comfortable on the transits in between, but
For sure.
You're always after what's going fastest. But here's the thing. We are in a Porsche GT3 RS, a 500 and something horsepower, just amazing fast car. And we finished 9th overall, and there was not a car in front of us that didn't have 700 horsepower or more, or weigh. One car didn't have quite that much horsepower, but weighed less than 2,500 pounds. A highly, highly, highly modified Honda S2000 with aero bits and all sorts of stuff all over it. So we're in a Porsche GT3 RS, and we're kind of getting our butts kicked in some places. Like, we just aren't fast enough. So everybody said this year was probably the most competitive it's been in maybe ever. There were teams that had finished in the top 5 like 2 years ago, because last year was canceled. And this year they were finishing 15th or 21st. So it was super, super competitive. So it was tough, but anytime you get a chance to spend a week in a Porsche GT3 RS, it's not a bad thing.
So, I mean, you can't have any support. You're driving this same vehicle across the country
And racing
and then racing it.
Yep. Yeah.
Holy bejeebus. that is a lot for a car.
And I would say, the other thing that I think a lot of the old timers of the one lap were surprised. Usually there's a lot of mechanical failures or other problems.
Yeah.
In the top 15 or 20 cars, I don't think there was a single one.
Really?
Now, there was problems, but
fellow in a Dodge Viper that hit a deer on the highway, and that kind of ended his one lap event. There was a Porsche GT2 RS that had a moment at Summit and didn't continue after that. Unfortunately, there was a Ford Focus that during the transit from New Orleans to Atlanta, in the middle of this massive storm, got hit by another car on the highway and kind of looked like the car was written off. Fortunately, both people were okay in the car.
Wow.
There was some attrition sort of along the way, but and can I tell you a great story?
Absolutely.
So I didn't know about this until Saturday after the event was ending. And this fellow comes up and he starts talking to me, and he was driving an Audi TT, pretty bone stock Audi TT, towing a U-Haul trailer with all their spares. And because some teams do that, they'll tow a little trailer behind with, tools and whatever, right? This guy told me his story, and I won't do it justice, but basically 6 weeks before the event, they didn't have a car, the two guys. But one guy said, well, I've got this Audi TT, but there's no front end on it. I'll start working on it. He started working on it in his driveway, outdoors, in the snow in Denver. Got this thing together. They got it running and passed inspection in Colorado on the Wednesday before the event started. Drove from Colorado to South Bend, Indiana, got there Friday night to start the thing Saturday morning. Ran through the first few events, got to Eagles Canyon, had a transmission problem, it overheated, and they made the decision that they would skip the next event at NOLA at New Orleans the next day, and instead they drove from Dallas to the other guy's house in Atlanta, pulled the transmission out, went to a junkyard, got a transmission or something out of a Volkswagen, the same transmission, went back, put a new transmission in it, finished it at 5 a.m. and drove out to Atlanta Motorsport Park in time to compete that day. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that goes on with these guys.
That
it's just
is
so cool.
Nuts. And of course you guys are all catching up. You're like, you will not believe what just happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So you guys have radios that are reaching other cars, or
Nope.
any cell phone
Nope.
linking everybody up? Is just every man for themselves?
Pretty much that's the idea, but you kind of get to know people. Well, some people already knew people beforehand from past events, and some of us knew each other from other activities and things like that. And so along the road you'd see them, and every now and then you'd be zipping along the highway at a pleasant speed, and then three other cars on the transit would come up behind, and they're doing maybe a tiny bit more than that. And of course you follow in and you tuck in, and now there's like three or four of you blasting down the highway at a very safe speed. And
Wink, wink, nod, nod.
wink, wink, nod, nod, say no more. Yes.
So you guys flipping each other off as you're passing just for giggles?
No, in fact, it was, you kind of just, you're kind of playing along, and you're working together, watching for police and watching for problems. And, there was one point where there's three of us zipping along the highway. We were coming from New Orleans, heading up to Atlanta before we hit the storm. And we came up on three guys on motorcycles, on super bikes. And of course they look over and see a Porsche Corvette and a BMW. And they thought, oh, this is the greatest moment of our lives. So of course they're doing wheelies at stupid speeds on the highway, weaving in and out of traffic, keeping up with us. And we kind of backed off at that point and went, I don't want to be part of this. And then we hit the storm, and they were nowhere to be found. So I feel sorry for those guys. So yeah. I mean, but basically I'd say one of the things that's really cool about the event is how everybody helps everybody. And there's actually an award given out to, like, a sportsmanship award at the end of the event to somebody that went out of their way to help other people. And it's almost like everybody is trying to win that. You go to the tracks, and tracks that I've not been to before, I've got other drivers coming up to me and saying, well, here's what I do. And then other tracks that I've been to, I'm telling them what I would do here. And, we're sharing what tire pressures to run. And it's Andy Hollis, again, who's done this thing many times. He had this great quote. He says, we're not competing against each other. We're all competing against the event. And I think that's really what this event is like. We're all in it together. It's kind of like running a marathon, you all just want to get to the end and pat each other on the back, and great way to go.
So that sportsmanship is like the coveted award.
I would say it is. I kind of, this is my first time kind of seeing the awards part of it. And I'd say it is the thing that everybody cheered the most for. And I think everybody was like, man, I'd like to win that someday.
Wow. Okay. So I just have to ask again, how long is this again? How many miles?
So you start on Saturday, you finish the following Saturday.
Okay.
And
it's about 1,500 to 5,000 miles? No, 5,000?
This year was just under, I think it was just under 4,000 miles.
Wow.
I know. I counted, we went through 17 states. We drove through 17 states in 7 days.
Wow.
So, it was interesting from all sorts of different perspectives. And, from how quickly can we get off the highway, get food, get gas, and get back on the road. Mike and I have this great photo of us, the two of us, in a gas station that had an Arby's in it. And, you're sitting in the car and for hours and hours. So the last thing you want to do is sit down at a table to eat dinner. And of course, everything is, we want to eat outdoors, wearing our mask kind of thing at this point in time. And so fortunately, we were carrying a table with us called the rear wing on a GT3 RS. So we laid our food out on the rear wing of the Porsche and had a nice dinner standing up. That was one of the nice meals we had along the way.
Yeah. So is there any indication on your vehicles that you are participating in this, or they're just like your cars are in stealth mode?
Absolutely not stealth mode. They've got stickers all over them, big 1-lap stickers. And
jeez.
I would say that there were, I heard a story from one of the guys saying that leaving New Orleans, there was about 6 or 7 cars that got a police escort out of town. The police were all in favor and saying, love what you guys are doing. We'll help you. And they put a couple of cars in front, lights and siren, put them in the fast lane and drove them out of town on the highway for as long as they could, I guess. And I think there were
love what you're doing, just not in our town. Be safe.
Well,
we'll get you out.
I think certain police departments were kind of like, hey, this is cool, you know?
Right.
And so Bucky Lasek, probably one of the next to Tony Hawk, the winningest skateboarder in history. It's got like 20 medals at X Games. He was driving a Subaru in it, and he had a sponsor, some coffee company. And apparently what they did was they put out some kind of a message to the police departments in every state that we drove through and said, if you can give Bucky a ticket, you'll get coffee on us for a year.
Oh, geez.
Well, I talked to Bucky at the end of the event, and he made it through the entire event without getting a ticket. In fact, during the awards thing, Brock asked the question, how many of you got a speeding ticket? Not a single person put their hand up.
Wow.
80 cars over a week driving all close to 4,000 miles. And some of them were a little beyond the speed limit. Nobody got a speeding ticket, which I think proves the point that if you're paying attention, it pays off.
So what are some of the wacky things that have happened besides the car or the tent? I mean, and it just can't, and not just in your particular event, but in past events. I mean, I would be really interested. This really does sound like Cannonball Run, except with a twist.
It is. And, I'm trying to think of wacky. I think
I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe, it's not wacky, but I think one of the most cool parts about it is how some teams have sacrificed themselves to help other teams. And here's actually a great story. So one of the teams called Shaky Dog, Chris Lewis and Robert Thorne. Robert raced professionally. Chris is a really top driver. They had a highly, highly modified Corvette, ended up finishing third overall. At one of the events, and I can't remember which event it was, I think it might have been at Eagles Canyon, their second run, the official timing and scoring had them finishing first. And while we're on transit to New Orleans that night, we see a Facebook post from them saying, I can't remember the exact words, but essentially they self-reported that time that the official timing and scoring got wasn't right. They showed their laps from their data system in their car. And because of that, gave somebody else first and second, and they ended up finishing third at that event.
Wow.
And I think, it's just...
it's, you know what, though?
It right thing to do.
It sounds like it's really not all about the winning. It's about having the adventure of your life.
Yes, but
maybe,
at the same time... Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, everybody is... it's serious competition. Tom O'Gorman and Steve Loudon won in a car that Steve has been developing for a few years. And it is one serious, highly modified Corvette. Bringing the guy, I think somebody said there were 6 drivers in the field that had professional racing experience. There were a countless number of national champions in either SCCA, road racing, or autocross. So everybody takes it like the competition's serious. Well, not everybody, but most people take it serious, like they want to win, but not at the expense of doing the wrong thing, or they would rather have everybody at the top of their game and beat them at that than win by default.
Yeah. Yeah, they're. If you need to, Russ, we can enter and we can bring that average down.
Yeah.
Wait
a minute. You guys just finished winning a race here, so you're.
Yeah, I don't think it was a national championship, nor a pro race, nor fast. But besides that, it was, yes, we did win.
Yeah. there was a team, and I've heard that in past years they have like 3 or 4 cars. This year they only had one because everybody lives in Switzerland, and they fly over here and they do the event in Chevrolet HHRs. You know, those,
Oh yeah.
what I call silly clown cars. And this year there was only one car because Amanda, who is American but lives in Switzerland, could get back over here, but the rest of them couldn't. So, you know, maybe they're not the most serious at we're going to spend the most or have the fastest car. I'm pretty sure based on Amanda's dress attire on the second to last day at Gingerman, her being in a Pikachu costume.
Yeah.
Kind of, that was, you asked for wacky.
We can do that. that we can do.
That's something we know.
Yeah.
So our next question is about tires. So since you're only allowed to use the one set of tires, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
What tires did you use?
We used the Michelin PS4S or PS4s, yes. And which ended up being the right choice. There, you know, for us, the choice was between that and the Michelin Cup 2s. As it turns out, Michelin doesn't make a Cup 2 in the size for that GT3 RS yet. But there was, so one of the teams with one of the Shelby GT 500 Mustangs, driven by Beaver Nuggets Billy Johnson of pro racing fame, who actually did the development work for Ford on that car. So nobody in the world knows that car better than Billy. And, you know, he's raced in World Endurance Championship and IMSA and all sorts of stuff. So he was driving that car on the Michelin Cup 2s. And the Cup 2s don't do well in cold weather. So Billy had to work really hard at getting heat into them, including doing major burnouts, which by the end of the last day, the tires were to the cords.
The tires just kind of fell off.
Exactly, yeah. But, you know, given a choice going into the event, if I had to do it all over again, I would have a set of PS4s and a set of Cup 2s lined up. And basically the day before the event starts, you go through tech and the tires get stamped and to prove that you're on the same tires. But I would make that decision based on the weather prediction for all the events. We went from, so the first morning and the last morning, and Gingerman, actually, when we got to Gingerman on Friday morning, it was 32 degrees.
Wow.
It was 88 degrees in Eagles Canyon and in New Orleans. So you needed a tire that worked when it was really cold and really hot. So we saw teams that struggled in the cold weather, but excelled in the hot weather, and vice versa.
Right.
So they do have to be at least a 200 tread wear tire.
Did the cancellation of the several of the events make it a bit easier on the tires than you anticipated, or?
Oh, like the drag race was canceled.
Yeah.
I don't think that would have, for us, for sure. I mean, our
they were
tires
still not going to look good at the end either way, right?
Yeah. But you know, our tires lasted well, and that event, I don't think it would have done a whole lot for a couple of passes on the drag strip. So,
Didn't you lose some laps at Atlanta due to sound and
yes,
NOLA due to weather? I think.
At AMP, we ran in the morning, and they have a sound limit, and there was something like 5 cars over the sound limit. And Brock Yates, I think one of Brock's like main principles for the event is, I'll make up the rules as we go. And so instead of either disqualifying 5 cars or saying those 5 cars can't run in the afternoon, he just said, none of us will run. So we didn't run the second time trial at AMP, which was a shame because that was one of the ones that Mike was driving. So that was a shame for that. When we got to Memphis, we were going to run the full road course that uses the drag strip. But as anybody that's ever driven on a drag strip in the rain knows, where the drag cars burn out, they have that VHT that gets put down, which is like a sealer, and it is slipperier than ice when it gets wet. And with walls on either side, it would just be dangerous. So what they ended up doing was we did a time trial that started at the end of pit lane, went around to almost the end of the track before the start again. So it was a very short run. So we got a little bit less running there as well.
Right.
Wow.
But things change, and I think that's Brock's deal is
So
be adaptable.
So the racers that participate and the type of cars that they are any of them caged?
Well, they don't have to be.
Okay. All right. And that's one question, and that's fine. So what are some of the safety requirements in the vehicles?
The cool thing about the event is the rule book is very, very small. And I think I would say if the car is legal to do like NASA time trials, you're legal.
Okay.
You have to have a proper helmet and driving suit. And the helmet and driving suit were the only things that got checked from that perspective. And
Okay.
I would say it's just up after that. It comes down to, if it fits NASA time trials or something like that, you're okay.
Now, the people that race in this, obviously, they sound like they're pretty much heavy hitters. But what can anybody just sign up for this, or is okay?
And I would say, so heavy hitters, I've talked about some, but there's I talked to one fellow who he had done 2 track days before starting this.
That's my kind of people.
I talked to other people where, my co-driver Mike, I think, has got 2.5 years of experience on track and stuff. And he's done a lot in that 2.5 years for what he can do kind of thing. But, there's a lot of people that there's a lot of, so I met a fellow who has a podcast about autocrossing. I think he had done 2 track days. I think he said 2 track days, or driven on 2 tracks in his life, and everything else had been autocross. And this time, he ended up driving on 5 tracks in 1 week. So, it's a mix of people with no experience, lots of experience. What I would say is, if somebody's interested in doing this, watch the One Lap of America website, and the day the registration opens, get your registration in. I've heard that at some years, Brock is looking for, but I think in the last few years, there's been a waiting list to get in.
Wow. Well, I'm kind of chuckling because I'm kind of looking at some of the cars that are in this event. It goes from McLaren all the way down to a Ford Fiesta.
Yep.
So,
That's Rob Kreider in his fist.
Rob won his class.
Yeah.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Class of
That was way up. Just a funny side note here. There were 4 people at this event who had been guests on my podcast who I'd never met in person. And It was just way cool for me to actually meet the people that I'd talked to on my podcast, but never had a chance to actually meet in person. So that was cool.
So I do have another question, because we're talking about the cars. How did the Teslas perform? Because I see so far 3.
Yeah, there were 3 of them. And in some events, first of all, they're fast. I'm glad we didn't have the drag race, because they probably would have made us all look silly, because those things are so quick that in acceleration. They're really good on the skid pad. The weight is so low in those things. they performed. There was a couple of, I think, a couple of the time trials where they did quite well. Trying to think, I can't remember where that was. I remember kind of going, wow, they're up there. Like, I wouldn't want to be driving one of them on the transits, because I think I talked to one of the people driving a Tesla, and I think they made like 3 stops
Mhm.
on a transit, where we were lucky to make one at times.
Wow.
Right.
So
Their stops are longer too.
yeah. So
That's
that's
right.
one of
They
the-
do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How long?
Oh,
How,
I,
'cause
if you're looking at the entry list, you also got to check out the team names.
I
And
am
I've
looking
been-
at the team names. I
the
got
best
winged
one?
grandpas.
Yeah. To me, the best one was, the team name is "Our Wives Think We Went to the Store."
That's fantastic.
For a week.
Yes, for a week. You got lost. Yeah.
They hadn't. That was looking for bread.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at some of these funny names and I'm cracking up. One is just Mana.
Yeah. So everyone, certainly there's a lot of fun to be had in it. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really kind of enjoying this whole thing. So I mean, kudos for you guys for jumping into this. This is amazing.
yeah.
Now, I think I've just heard rumors about it, but I didn't know how awesome this awesomeness was.
It's interesting, because I talk to people in motorsport who have been in motorsport, for decades, and some of them are, oh, I got to do that. It's one of those things. And others are like, never heard of it. So it's kind of a weird event that way. Like, some people know all about it and some people don't have a clue anything about it.
God.
Yeah.
So I know that there's an advantage to qualifying early, but I believe at one of the events, the advantage of qualifying early led to an issue with the oil dry, which hurt everybody and kind of upended things that one day.
Well, in fact, I would say there were 3 events where we were at a disadvantage running early. So at Eagles Canyon, when we got there, and we were out doing a track walk early in the morning, there was a line of oil dry all the way around the track. There had been a vintage race there the day before, and apparently somebody had dropped oil, and this driver drove the perfect line all the way around the track, because he oiled the entire track. So the track had oil dry on it when we went out. So the first, I'm going to say, dozen cars were definitely at a disadvantage. And obviously the first were at the most of a disadvantage, because the track was very slippery, and then it got better. So if you were sort of mid-pack, you actually had an advantage that day. There were 2 other days where the track was wet in the morning, and we went out on a track that was damp or just drying. And again, if you were sort of mid-pack, you actually had a better track. And I think there was one, well, actually at New Orleans, the track went from sort of damp with the first group to dry, and the very last drivers, it was pouring rain. But that's just the luck of the draw. They don't try to even it out. It's just the luck of the draw.
So when you were out there, you said you met some people that you hadn't ever met. Did you meet any like old friends that you hadn't seen in a bit? Because I mean, everybody's kind of quarantined the past year, so I'm sure you know a couple people in motorsports. I was just
Yeah, for sure. There was, some. I mean, I see Randy post every now and then, but
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Right? Yeah, and
man's
Billy
everywhere.
Johnson, guy that hadn't really spent a whole lot of time around, but got a lot more time to spend with him. Some other people who I kind of knew through other, barely knew them a little bit, or knew them kind of more from online stuff, and had a chance to really spend a lot of time with them. And this is going to come as a major shock to you. Not. There are just some really incredibly fun, cool, exciting people in our sport. We're so lucky to be in this sport around those kind of people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I tell you, I love the people in racing.
Yeah.
They are just the kindest, most helpful people, and fun.
Well, at the end of the event, people were coming up and kind of, because I was a lap puppy That's what rookies are called, lap puppies. So I was a lap puppy. So the question that I had asked a lot was, would you do it again? Or what was the highlight? And I'd say the highlight was the people. It was just how, like I said, how they worked together. And it was that feeling of we're all in this together.
What was your favorite part? Did you have a favorite track or event along the way, or a state or a city that you went through?
One of my favorite parts was the bed on Saturday night.
Yeah, I imagine so.
that felt awfully good.
Hot shower.
Yeah.
Dinner sitting down.
No.
Yeah. I would say Eagles Canyon was such a fun track, and I love going to a track that I'd never seen before. So, it kind of put me through the paces of, okay, how am I going to learn this track? Studying the track map, watching videos, preparing for it as much as I possibly could. And then, doing some mental imagery and getting out there and doing one run. And then, because literally you show up, I would go and do a track walk. And actually that was one of my all-time favorite parts of the whole trip, was each morning going out and doing a track walk. And I purposely try to do track walks by myself. Some drivers will go out in a group of people, but I find that you end up doing more socializing and less studying of the track. And there's something special about being out on a racetrack first thing in the morning when it's by yourself and you're just looking at the track and the shape of the pavement and the changes in the pavement and the curbs and stuff like that. And you're just studying it. It's like, that's really cool. So Eagles Canyon, going out there and doing that track walk and then driving that track for the first time, and you got to go.
And where is that? Where is Eagles Canyon at?
Just outside of Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It's super fun. And yeah, being able to, a lot of racing is get out there and try to go as quickly as you can, but you do have a little bit of time. This is more like autocross where, you've got 3 laps and it's from a standing start. There were events, I'm trying to think, at Summit Point, my time, or maybe it was Gingerman. My time at Gingerman, 0.3 of a second, I think it was, would have moved me up 2 spots. And that's 0.3 of a second over the combination of 3 laps from a standing start. So that's how close it was. And if you just think, oh man, what could I have done differently to find 0.3 of a second?
Wow.
You could have driven with your Garmin Catalyst that you helped with.
Yes. Yeah. So, the track walks, the studying the tracks, learning them fast, all that stuff, that was highlights. And I'm going to say the one other thing that people said, what would you do differently, or the same? And, to me, the number one piece of advice for this event is make sure you have the right co-driver. And I was so fortunate that, this guy, Mike Martin, emails me out of the blue, asked me to come and do it. We bumped into each other at the PRI show, not last December, the December before, spent like 10 minutes talking. We talked on the phone once or twice. And literally I showed up and I was like, hey, Mike, I guess we're living together for a week. I sure hope we get along with one another. And I talked to a couple other people who were, 3 days into it. They're like, man, I can't wait to get rid of this person that's with me in the car.
That's kind of
Mike and I just had an absolute great time while we were on these transits, having great conversations about all sorts of topics, lots of driving topics, but, some other things as well. And so I would say the number one thing is make sure that your co-driver is somebody that you can live with for a week.
Absolutely. I don't know if Vicki's put up with me this long. I don't think I can get another week out of her, but I'll try.
I try.
It's a burden. So, did you, to the surprise of absolutely no one who knows you, you have a touch of a competitive edge to your personality. Knowing you prepare. did you have any teams going in that you thought were the ones to beat? And how did your projections do versus how it came out?
For sure, when I would say that was an area that I underestimated the competition.
Mm.
When Mike first asked me about this, that was, when was that? In the
18.
fall of 2019.
19.
And I looked at, I guess I looked at the results of that year's event, and looking at it, I kind of went, there's going to be like 5 or 6 cars that are
Tough.
going to be really difficult to beat, but we're in a GT3 RS. We should be really competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Then I showed up and walked around going, ruh-roh.
Yeah.
There's some serious machinery here, and there's some serious drivers. And I would say that we learned pretty quickly that there were 15 cars and 15 teams that were competitive. And, there was one car, this Honda S2000, where it was so highly modified. I'm pretty sure if we'd asked people, pick the car most likely to break down,
or least desired to do transits.
Yeah, no knock against the prep these guys, because these Super K guys are amazing what they build. But it's a super highly modified car. We didn't think they'd last the transits because I guess they had no windows in the car, and they were wearing earplugs because it was so loud. And you kind of went, that thing, is it really going to finish? Well, it finished second overall.
Yeah.
So I would say when I looked at it, I just went, wow, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. And there were teams, I know that the team that won with Tom and Steve, they went testing at a lot of tracks beforehand.
Yep.
I saw a post from Tom, 3 weeks before the race, and he was at Eagles Canyon testing, and he's at other tracks testing. And I went, well, that's going to be we're a little bit of a disadvantage there, because out of the 5 tracks that we went to, I had driven 2 of them.
I think he'd missed one of all of them. So
yeah. So it was. There were moments there where I was like, wow, we're going to have to get really smart here to try to win this thing. And but reality sets in, and you go, okay, we're not going to win this on outright speed. We just got to be super consistent, get points in every single event. And we went, there was a time where we were 7th overall, and then we were back in 12th overall, and then we were 10th, and we were pretty much stuck at 10th, and thought, we're going to finish 10th until the last day. And then we popped up to 9th with 2 good runs in the last 2 days. So.
So are you going to try to wear blue glasses at your next event to get a little bit of the rub there? Or?
To get some Tomo going?
Yeah, get some Tomo on there.
Orange.
Orange? You're going orange? All right.
Orange? Yeah, I'll go orange. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's earlier in the rainbow. So Roji Biv, you're probably going to finish ahead of him then.
See, there's another engineer thing coming out there. So
sorry, it happens. Sometimes it just bubbles to the surface. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Next question. Well, it's not really a question. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. You did share some good already.
What was the good, the bad, and the ugly? Well, I was the ugly. That's an easy
Yeah.
one. The bad was my second run in the autocross. I totally sucked on that one and clipped a cone. That really hurt us. It had been, let me think. Probably 20 years since I'd done an autocross. And I tried to get a little bit too much on that second run. My approach to autocross has always been, or my approach to anything where I get 3 runs at something, is kind of put one in the books in the first run, push the absolute limits on the second one, and then tidy it up for the third one.
Yeah.
And I just pushed the limits a little bit too much on that second run. So that part sucked. And I would say the other thing that kind of the bad part was, when you do see somebody else that has an issue, seeing those guys that got crashed on the highway, that was an ugly thing, and just glad that they were okay. So some of that was that, and the good was, I would say I came away from the event with a really good friend in Mike Martin, who, before the week, like I said, barely knew each other. And, the friendships that built with some other people like Andy and Ann Hollis and, some of the other people, Dave and David Ogburn. Dave is a test driver engineer for Goodyear. And we had traded emails through the years, but it was the first time we'd met each other. And man, what just an awesome guy he is. And Chris Mayfield was a test driver for Tesla, actually. And his co-driver, Alex Moss. And just, some of these people that I got to meet along the way, that was by far the major good out of the good, bad, and ugly. And I know I missed some bunch of people in there as well.
Oh, so. Yeah, there was a few people driving, so nobody's being overlooked. It's just coming to mind.
Yeah. I'm going to mention Scott Donahue and Chris. I can't remember his last name. Scott went out of his way to help us in various things because he does a lot of tuning on cars like ours, and he was super, super helpful along the way. And just people like that kind of just kept bubbling up all over the place. That was so much fun. And people that I didn't know, guys in a Dodge Charger and, just all over the place. It was so cool to see.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So Ross, we can't have you on without asking you, what did you learn from this event?
Well, like I said, surround yourself with good people.
Sure. Always. That's why I married Vicki.
Yeah. Smart.
Working my way out of this bathtub tonight.
The other thing I learned, and this was a big, big lesson, is if you're going to go and do the one lap and you want your best chance at getting a good result, you do need to prep. And I am positive that if we had gone and tested, meaning we'd gone to the track for a day or two prior to the event and just played with tire pressures a bit more, learned a little bit more about what the car liked and what it didn't like, and trying to get the tire pressures to come in, within 3 laps, but not at some point I got the pressures. I was a little optimistic on the pressures and they came in on the first lap. By the 3rd lap, I was slip sliding around so bad that I was just hanging on. So, with a day or two of testing, even just focused on tire pressures, I know that because the competition was so close, I know that we probably would have finished a couple of positions higher. So that would have been that was the biggest aha, I think, was just, this is like every other form of motorsport. If you want to do well, you got to prepare.
Sure. Yeah, you can win a lot of things in the paddock for sure.
Yeah. And if you have the luxury of being able to get to some of the tracks that are on the event, and Brock typically likes to announce which tracks they're going to be going to as late as possible to try to get it so that people can't spend a lot of time preparing by going to other tracks. But, if you happen to know 1 or 2 of the tracks out of the 5 or so that you're going to go to, and then you can make a trip to 1 or 2 other ones, that's going to give you a big advantage over some of the teams that might only know 1 or 2 of the tracks.
So, since I think we agree that this is going to bother you and you're going to have to do it again. So, if you do it again, let's put it out to the universe. What car?
What car? Interestingly, at some point, Randy Popes and I were talking about that and trying to, if it's like this year, you either need a car that's got a very reliable 700 plus horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
A Porsche GT2 RS would be a very, very capable car, I think.
Sure.
If you had a Porsche GT2 RS and the money to buy that.
Sure. There is that part too. They don't have those at Hertz.
Yeah. and you did a little testing and tuning to prepare beforehand, I think that'd be a pretty serious car. I don't think you would win by dominating a lot of events, but I think you would finish in the top 3 or 4 every single event, and that would give you a pretty good shot at it. The other option is to kind of go the opposite end of it and look for something that's, very light with still some good horsepower, but very light, like the Super K guys with a Honda S2000. I even started thinking about, could you get something like a Jannetta and have it street prepped and enough and something like that. The downside of those cars is they tend to be less reliable.
And the transits.
Yeah. And, my hat's off to Alex and Chris in that it's Andy and Alex in the Honda, who managed to drive that thing on those transits all that time. How they put up
filled with corn the one time, right?
Pardon me?
Their car filled up with corn the one time from a truck in front of it.
Oh, I didn't hear that story. So
yeah, I was cyber stalking the event because I was really into it, especially once I knew you were in it. And there's a podcast, Slip Angle, that did like nightly reviews, and they'd call drivers while they were in the transit that they had on the phone number, like the Grid Life guys mostly. And the apparently that car got stuck behind a truck that had some like cattle feed or something, and it was leaking. And since they had no windows and everything's open, the car eventually not filled up like it was full, but it was everywhere in the car and in the engine bay and all over the place. And so I think at one of your stops where you check in on the transits, they found a vacuum cleaner or something and tried to get out of it mostly. But yeah, it looked like somebody was feeding a cow in their car for a little bit.
Yeah. We did a Facebook Live thing with Anthony Maganoli. I don't even know how to say Anthony's last name, but that was another thing. So he was doing these Facebook Live reviews or interview kind of thing. So, we're basically on the highway doing the transit, and we must have been like 3 miles in front of him. Mm-hmm. And then we hit a storm coming out of north of Charlotte, and ended up, but between Slip Angle and Anthony's deal, and I know Bucky and Dave were doing a bunch of stuff with their online stuff. There was all sorts of really cool social media stuff throughout the event, and I would say I went into it with the intent of doing a little bit more of that. But I'll say that by the time I got on the road and I got into a conversation with Mike, which was very cool, it was like, oh yeah, it's 11 o'clock at night. Let's not bother with it doing anything.
Yeah.
I did record a few things that might end up into a podcast, but I'm not sure.
Oh, that'd be fun. That would be fun. We were rooting for you from the sidelines. We weren't able to get our stuff together, or technically we're not prepared to do this, but we were rooting for you on the sidelines and watching every day. And I couldn't wait to see the updates, and congratulations on being able to get out there. It sounded like you had a great time. Who knows? We might see you at one in the future.
You really need to do it.
I know, I do. If only somebody would listen and know what it was, maybe I could talk her into it. And if she wasn't on mute, maybe she'd be able to say yes, but whatever. We have a background noise with the little ones, or the not so little anyway. So did we miss anything, Ross? You got your ideal car, you got your tires, you got any modifications? You're going to run it basically stock? You're going to get crazy?
I would say, well, it depends on the car, but minimal mods, because I want the car to be super reliable. And I'm not definitely looking around at which tires are best, but this was a really cool experience, as well as because Michelin had 2 of their test engineers.
Oh, wow.
Driving a BMW.
The white one?
Bill and Ed's Great Adventure, Excellent Adventure. And they were just so helpful. In fact, one of my best runs was at Gingerman, and I'm going to give them partial credit for that, because of, I went up to him and just said, help me on the tire pressure thing here. And so right now, I would kind of lean towards sticking with Michelin's, and because they're awfully good to me.
Right.
But yeah, I would keep the mods down just to make sure the car is super reliable.
Right. Would you do? I mean, you'd do brake fluid and brake pads, but
Yep.
Probably keep everything. Assuming it's at the Porsche that we were talking about before, you're probably not going to need to do a whole lot to it. So,
there's a little bit of tweaking you can do with the shocks, the dampers in those cars, and you want to be a little careful on playing with alignment kind of stuff, because yes, you want the car good on the track,
right?
But you don't want to destroy the tires driving 600 miles between events.
Would you be a proponent of like bringing some alignment adjustment gear with you for this event and changing it for track and then changing it back, or too much?
Think, I don't know this for a fact, but I think some teams, I didn't see anybody doing that at the track. What I would do is beforehand, I would, for example, just as an example, if I found out that through some testing, my car worked best on the track with whatever, 1/8 of an inch of toe out and 2 degrees of negative camber. But standard highway was 1 degree of camber and 1/16 of an inch of toe out. I might just know how much of that adjustment I could make, and just make those, like, it's half a turn on the tie rod end to get that toe out, and it's move the thing and upright or whatever on for the camber, on the camber plates or something like that. So I would have those things kind of pre-figured out,
right,
and then just make those adjustments. But it is different with 3 laps. So I would say everything is a compromise on this event. Sure. Yeah. But again, the more of that stuff you could do beforehand, and if you knew that a damper change of this and this made the car work a little bit better on track, but then you could dial some of that out and make the car not quite so harsh on the highway. And if you had those tools to be able to do that, I think in the Porsche GT2 RS, you basically use an app.
Wow.
It's, I think that's how you do it with that car.
So maybe they did. Haha.
Yeah.
So now we've been talking a lot about the cars, but we're going to talk about you guys now. What did you have to do to prep for that? Not the cars, but you guys. What did you find that some people were doing more cleverly? And I mean, obviously, this is not the time for your, water intake schedule, to meet your quotas. But I mean,
2 gallons a day.
I know. What would you, how would you prep differently for the next race? And what did you see other drivers doing?
Beyond the going testing,
not cars. I mean, you guys are traveling and camping, and you guys are carrying minimum stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of shedding as you're going along, obviously.
Yeah. So I would say, it's the other thing that I would do beforehand is figure out how to carry a minimum of supplies. But I mean, on the Friday before the start of the event, Mike and I spent time practicing loading and unloading his car. And I heard some stories from a couple different people. Chris Lewis told me a story of a few years ago. He was running a Corvette, and because the Corvette's got that sort of big hatchback area in a C7, I guess it was, I think he was talking about, I'm assuming. And what he did with all their supplies, he got one of those kind of those roof rack bags that you can put on the top of your car. And he got one of those, put a thin piece of plywood in the bottom of it, so it kind of took a shape, put all of their stuff in it, took 2 broom poles in the top, and 2 people could just lift this thing up, plunk it into the back of the thing. They'd show up at an event, they'd lift it back out of it, go and drive. everything was just all in one place. For Mike and I, it was a process of every single thing came out of the car one by one. If it was raining, we'd put up this little tent and we'd stuff it in there, and then we'd have to put it all back in. And, we did find that by packing the car in the exact same place, in the exact same way every single time, we got it down to probably 5 or 6 minutes to pack and unpack. And that pays off because it just gives you an extra little bit of time of either doing the track walk or getting on the road, and it gives you that extra little bit of time to stop and go or eat or something like that. So,
Right.
So that part of it, and like I said, some teams towed a little trailer behind them,
Oh, okay.
and that's obviously a pretty efficient way of doing it. Just unhook everything and away you go.
Yeah, there's like little tiny capsules,
Yeah,
almost like a trailer capsule,
yeah. The fellows with the Audi TT that I told you about earlier, they kept saying that we're the team driving the U-Haul trailer pushing the Audi TT. Because I guess they went to U-Haul to pick up one of those little tiny trailers, and they didn't have one, so all they had is sort of a bigger utility trailer. So they took it, and it actually did look bigger than the Audi did. So
There's something to sleep in.
yeah, it could have. So yeah, but I think if I did it again in a car like the GT3, I might even take one of the the neck pad things that you wear on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
I might try taking one of those inflatable ones like that to see if I could just relax my head back enough just to doze off for 15 minutes on a trip somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Would you change the seats from the more aggressive sport racing seat to a little more road seat? Would that be something up?
Thinking about that now, we could have, I suppose you could have put a more comfortable seat in the passenger side and just know that as a passenger, because we would switch off we switched off about every 4 hours. So one would drive for 4 hours because the transits ended up being somewhere in that 8 to 9.5 hour range. So one would drive for about 4 hours and then the other one finish it off. So, even if you had half that time in a seat that was more comfortable, as long as it didn't add more weight.
Yeah, there's that.
Jennifer would race a taco truck. Look at you.
BYOT.
I bet there's a story there.
Remember the desert island where we get the 5 cars?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Jennifer's 5th car is a taco truck. She wants a taco truck on.
Yeah.
That's
So-
right. Very end of the race, everybody gets free tacos.
That's right.
Wow.
I'm a
that-
giver.
Yeah, that sounds pretty incredible. Because that was one thing that. So when you were racing, I mean, did you end up having to unpack in the rain and have to set up in the rain? And
There was once or twice where it was raining, but most of the time, we got there and it kind of stopped and just quickly unload, put a little tent up, throw everything into it, and we did have. I guess it was when we were at Memphis. We set up our little tent and threw our stuff into it, and I looked over to Bucky and Dave, Bucky Lessick, who I'd coached when he was doing rallycross, so I know Bucky pretty well, and I saw them moving all their stuff out. And I walked over to Bucky and I said, "Do you want to throw your stuff in our little tent over there?" And Bucky's like, "I got to throw my skateboard in there, please." That's what mattered to him more than anything, was just I don't want my skateboard to get wet, camera equipment or something like that. But so all of those things that you kind of learn along the way. I think a lot of teams either started with or ended up along the way buying. They either had a bicycle, a fold-up bicycle, or one of those little Razor scooter things. Because in the morning, if I'm out there doing track walk, and there are guys that are out there, they could get 2 laps on a little push scooter thing, where I could get 1 lap in the amount of time that I could walk it in. And you're not allowed to have any kind of motorized vehicle to get around the track. In fact, there was rumor that somebody had one of those electric bikes, and they were told pretty quickly, that's not legal. Get rid of it.
Oh, wow.
But if you had room, and I'm not so sure how we would have packed one of those little scooters into a GT3 RS, but one of those things you kind of go, if there was a way to jam one in there, it'd be worthwhile.
Yeah. Did you guys travel with like a mini cooler with you just to keep things, or just stopped off at whenever you had to stop for the facilities, load up and then hop back in?
Yeah, we just we would leave the track, grab something at the fuel stop, because we'd try to time our fuel so that we would end up at an event with the minimum amount of fuel in the car for that event.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant as we left, we would have to stop pretty quickly, fill it up, and that would get us most of the times to the next event. So we would just load up on drinks and whatever, usually about three of them each, and get in a car and start driving. And
it's at the one lap. It's a one lap of America hot pit at a Sheetz.
But I know some teams that had, they'd have little coolers and other things along the way. I know Scott Donahue was telling me, I think they had I walked up one time wherever, I think we were at NOLA, and he offered me, Cliff bars and all sorts of protein bars and everything. He's got like this cooler full of this stuff. And it was just, I think on Friday, he says, yeah, I'm looking forward to a meal. That's all we've eaten all week is protein bars and Cliff bars and things like that. I guess they never stopped for a real meal. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm imagining that some of these places that you went to probably have facilities like a hot shower.
Well, we got to a hotel every night.
Yeah. Okay.
We did get to Dawsonville. We got there just before midnight, got to our hotel, and was promptly told that our rooms were no longer there. So we had to go scramble and go down the street to the Super 8. And I guess I'm going to say this publicly. The Super 8 in Dawsonville is not exactly super.
It's not. No.
But, when you're only getting 5 hours sleep at most, it doesn't matter. You kind of just get in there. And as long as you, I think I heard a story from one of the drivers. I can't remember who that was. It might have been Scott too, I think, where their hotel treated them with bed bugs. So that's not a good thing. So
I've had that. That's no fun.
Yeah.
No. So, Ross, I would like to add one thing to your prep. I think it would behoove you to practice setting up and taking down your tent for the next time.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or at least get somebody to have a video camera on us when we're doing the first one.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure it would have gone viral.
Oh, I'm absolutely positive because it was talked about a couple different places, so it may become legend. Who knows?
Let's hope so. Yeah.
Well, Ross, we're so happy you were able to come on and talk to us about this, and I figure after a little bit over an hour of discussion, Vicki will now know what the one lap is, and perhaps I can talk
more
her
detail
into it.
on it.
Yes. So
either gonna jump at the chance to do it or say no way, one of the two.
okay.
Oh, I would be so into it.
Sounds like a blast.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
See you next year.
All right.
Yeah.
Very well. All right, Ross, for those who want to listen, they can't listen to your podcast, but you can go through it again like I am, going for lap number 5. Hopefully it comes back soon.
Yep. I'll be back creating some more Speed Secrets podcasts a little bit later in the year.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say we passed you or anything, but, it's the only time.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm at least in second place, maybe worse.
Yeah, you're up there, though. Don't worry. You're on the podium for sure. Anything else new coming up that's exciting that you want to drop news, or it's going to be a secret? You're not going to tell anybody?
No, I'm working on a little project that's I'll leave for a little bit later. Maybe if you invite me back for what would that be, 250?
Ross, I'll take you like every other episode. I really, I have 18 pages of questions alone, and you've seen it, so I do not exaggerate.
Okay, well, I'll let you know as soon as I hate talking about things until they're done, because I hate to be the guy that says, I'm going to launch this thing in July, and then it's July, and then it's August, and then it's September. Yeah. So I just like to pick away at what I'm working on, and then in the meantime, I've got tons and tons of coaching, and continue to do my Speed Secrets Weekly newsletter every week, and the Ask Ross thing on my website, and everything else. And I've got a couple of webinars I'm going to do later in the year and stuff like that. So yeah, there's no shortage of projects to take on. So.
Well, I think we're going to bump into you before next year's One Lap of America, but hopefully we'll see you there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I hope so.
It'd be great. Thank you, Ross. Thanks for coming on
Thank
again.
you.
Thanks for letting me ramble on about One Lap.
No,
Oh my
great.
gosh, it was awesome.
It is. Thank you, Ross. Have a great night.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Dominating with Dawson.
I was at the track. I'm looking for Ben Dawson. I keep hearing all these words, and I don't know what they mean. If only Ben Dawson was here.
He might be. Who's asking?
Some guy at the
All
track.
right. Yeah. Okay, it's Ben. This is me. I'll try to help.
All right. Very well.
Love when Ben comes on.
So Vicki and Jen were at the racetrack a couple weeks ago, and they heard a term and had not a clue. So
Nothing.
Okay.
there was this guy. He wasn't on a bike, but he kept talking about this pedal fest, and
Cool.
they
Like
were
a local festival?
like a festival, like a bike race or something. But I don't
that
think
sounds
that's
like really
exactly
good
what
stuff.
he meant.
Seriously, what the heck is that?
The Pedal Fest?
The pedal
Well,
fest.
first of all, let's narrow it down further. Does it involve tulips or daisy petals?
Nope. I don't think
Okay, so it's not a PETAL fest.
Nope.
I first encountered the term pedal fest watching drag racing on TV, like pro drag racing. And what it means in that case is when you see those big top fuel or fronty cars, those cars with the huge tires on the back and the big scoop sticking out of the hood, those cars that take like 3-4 seconds to make a run. When you see those cars and you can see the flames coming out the side when they're on the gas, right? So a lot of times those guys get in the gas, and their whole goal is they want to have the clutch set, so they get on the gas and just stay wide open all the way to the end of the track until they pull the chute. But if they have to get off the gas, that's called a pedal fest, just because they have to get off the gas to get the car straightened back out. They're pretty much literally driving those cars with their feet. So they have to come off the gas, and you can see the flames start and stop. So we can watch the pedal fest on a drag car happen. And they always run the slow motion camera too. So you can see literally where they're getting on and off the gas when the flames, go out on the exhaust pipes. In a road course racing, pedal fest is sort of the same thing where you're trying to get on the gas and you have to come back off because, you tried to give it full throttle and it didn't work. The car didn't go the direction you needed it to go or whatever happened. So does that make sense? You're trying to commit to the throttle. And then if you have to start playing with the pedal to get it to work, that's a pedal fest.
Oh, okay.
So that is not the goal.
Right. The ideal in drag racing and in our kind of racing is that as soon as you've applied the throttle, whether it's progressively or, you're fully, wide open immediately like in a Miata, but as soon as you start applying that throttle, don't come back out of it until, you're intending to, next brake zone or whatever you need to get out of throttle. But if you want to only apply the throttle in such a way and at such a time that you can be fully committed to it as you depress the pedal and, get the wheel straight.
So Vicki, have you ever had a pedal fest and not known about it?
Probably. It's like a hot mess.
Can be.
I've had hot mess experiences with pedals on the track. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, like I'm sure there've been times where you jump in the gas thinking, "Hey, this is gonna work," and then you start heading toward the edge of the track too fast. Like, wait, that's not working.
That's it.
Come back out of the gas. So yeah.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about. I think it's one of the most common places where it's going to come up in a road course setting is, somebody's just too eager or too early with trying to apply the throttle. I come from the Miata world, so you can pretty much take a stab at the throttle in the middle of a corner of the Miata just to see what's going to happen. There's no bad that's going to happen from just slapping the gas in the Miata. You got plenty of time to think about it. But yeah, this could be something that could be really critical in higher power cars or cars that are more sensitive to bad handling characteristics.
Yeah, I think that I have definitely gone into a turn when I had not taken my when my inputs were not all complete and I was getting prepared to lose the car. So I had to kind of do some stuff to the pedals so I didn't lose the car.
Yeah, that's a different kind of pedal fest. That's like that's
the hot mess that I'm talking about.
That's a pedal mosh pit. That's a whole different kind of event.
Yeah.
No, a pedal fest is just more of like it's more of a dance. It's more of a 1 foot dance of shame.
1 foot dance of shame.
It's
That's what I'll
usually,
call. That's a throttle. A throttle pedal fest is like a little 1 foot dance of shame. But if you're talking about, feet all over all the pedals, that's a whole different kind of thing.
it's
Okay.
usually on the way out of a turn.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's when you're trying to get back in the gas and you can't stay as fully committed as you thought you were going to. Like you're getting on the gas and you kind of go, bup, trying to get the car to stick all the way out.
Okay.
Yeah, don't make your car sound like that. That's not good.
Okay.
I was watching a video of us testing my teammates E36 M3, and it's me, and I got one of my teammates in the car driving around, and I'm thinking the drive is pretty good, but there's one place coming out of turn one where I jump in the gas and I have to go, I just have to slap the throttle to make it stay on line. And every time I can watch the video all the time because I can't go to the track, but every time I see that, I'm kicking myself like, damn it, I look like such a fucking idiot. But it's not, I'm not the only person to ever notice it, but even something that slight bothers me. Like I don't ever want to come off the gas. Like I try to be I'm proud of being committed to the throttle. I want to jump on it. And but also one of the ways I avoid a pedal fest, if you ever watch a video of me driving, is I'll get back on the gas and you'll see me sawing the wheel like a crazy man because I'm not coming back off that pedal. I'll do anything else but come off that pedal. So it's probably not great, but that's how I stay committed.
Sounds like a plan. Miss Vicki,
Yep.
you know what a pedal fest is now, right?
I do.
All right, very well.
Let's stay out of the pedal mosh pit. Let's figure out how to
Yeah.
build the
The
pedal
mosh
pit
pit's
from here on.
mosh pit's different. We'll cover that on another episode.
I've been much better.
Yes.
All right, that's good.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.